Today's episode of Reddit Stories in the Dark is brought to you by username Birthing Burgers. I think I might have found a cult's worship area. I live in Oklahoma. In the part of the state I'm from, there has always been rumors about this Catholic church out in the middle of nowhere, 30 minutes from the closest town, and that town itself isn't even on the maps. Huge Catholic church, beautiful windows, crosses and all, but no one goes there. Only priests and monks live there, and I assume no one else is really welcome. There's also a big cemetery connected to it, with a black metal gate around it. Friday, September 23rd, around 11 p.m. So I and 3 friends decided to go look around the cemetery, cause hey, it's Friday, and it's late and creepy. You know, normal spooky season shenanigans. We're looking around, gravestones, mausoleums from the 1910s, cool stuff. One of my buddies noticed a kinda hidden little path, just overgrown grass and debris in front of it. We go down, maybe almost a mile, and the path comes to an end, to a clearing in the woods. What do we see? Another cemetery. This struck me because there's no roads or clear path out there. How odd. Anyways, we find a path through the woods, out to the right of the cemetery, and head down it. Not even a half a mile, I noticed drums, and everyone else noticed it once I pointed it out. But they had a rhythm. We all thought how insanely weird that was because of how far we were. Not even another 500 feet, and glowing lights through the trees appeared. I said screw that, and demanded we leave, so we did. Saturday, October 1st, 1 a.m., so my buddies talked me into going back. We thought about bringing weapons, but decided not to. As we were going out there, we noticed tons of fresh footprints all throughout the trail in the second cemetery to where we decided to run from. That was creepy enough for me. When we finally got to where the lights previously were, there was no lights, no sound, no one, just 2 buildings. The first was a small stone temple looking building, not very big at all. The second looked like an 1890s abandoned house. The stone building had a wooden floor. There was some other language on the door, just a single word. Inside there was like 8 by 8 feet pentagram, with all the candles in all the places you see in scary movies, unlit. Random words painted on the walls, little figurines of animals, and at the back of the room, a small satanic statue, maybe like a foot big. On the second floor there wasn't much. Cups, plates, lighters, red nail polish, and a couple of jars with crystals and salts and liquids in them. 2 tiny rooms stacked on top of the other. What really creeped me out was there was a cowl and a hood like the monks I've seen wearing. The second building was a house, a little bit bigger than the stone building, but completely empty. 2 stories, swept floor, closed non-broken windows, functioning door. There was an attic, but we couldn't get to it. Definitely a super old house. Anyways, we left after checking it all out. I want to know what you all think of this. It was around 9 p.m. The fall night sky was completely dark. I parked my car in its usual spot, jumped out, and dashed toward my office building. I left the file I needed in my office. Tomorrow was my cherished work-from-home day. All employees had 1 day a week as my company is really big on flexibility and mental health. But I had forgotten to take one important file home with me. So there I was, standing in the dark, fiddling with my key card. Oh, thank God it worked. I went inside. A forest of cubicles spread out before me, only illuminated by the faint street light filtering through the blinds. I worked in human resources, in the private offices in the back, but it felt weird and unnecessary to turn on the main lights. I was in a hurry to get out. I flipped on my cell phone flashlight and headed to my office. I didn't even see it. My foot hit something soft and squishy, yet substantial. I heard a human cry. I flashed my light down. It was a sleeping bag, framing the startled face of one of my coworkers. Brett? Chris? My mind raced. It would be hard to say which of us was more shocked and upset. Then I realized, of course, I should have known. I was HR, and I was supposed to know about employee problems, which could affect their work. But he has always looked completely normal. Too normal. Clean, untalkative. The whites of his eyes glistened as he raised his hand to shield himself from the blinding light of my cell phone. And suddenly my shock gave way to pure fear, rushing through my veins and paralyzing me. He tried to scramble up, and the swishy sound of fabric echoed, but he seemed entangled with a sleeping bag. And then I noticed big glistening patches on the bag and on his body. I tried to step back, but fear held me hard. I wondered whether the tote bag I was holding would make a better weapon, or the stapler just within arm's reach on the desk close by. And also, I needed my file. I just needed it so badly. If only I could step around him. I didn't mean to disturb him. He could sleep in the office. I mean, I cared, of course. I only needed my file. I opened my mouth, and a squeaky noise came out. My free arm reached toward the stapler. He gasped my name. I felt my mouth move into an idiotic smile. Finally, I could speak. "Sorry," I whispered. "I just needed a file." And I tried to move. He shook his head. I heard his words sliding towards me. "Don't you remember?" I looked at the stapler, and then I saw the big glistening patches on myself, on my chest. I looked back at him. He smiled sadly. I tried to stop him. I don't know why. It was stupid of me. I shook my head. I didn't want to remember. I am HR, responsible to ensure that employees' personal issues didn't affect their performance. I just needed my file. It had the vacation pay I needed to process tomorrow. "Your ex. He came here looking for you. Don't you remember?" my coworker said. "But I was here too. You were working late. I was waiting for you to leave so I could get comfortable." I shook my head as the memories started to flood back. "Please," I begged. "I just need that one file." I could feel warm tears on my skin. How could I be dead if I could feel the warmth of my tears? "It's okay. Pam already processed them, remember?" This one has always been a funny one to tell. My husband does not believe in the paranormal and thinks it's a bunch of nonsense. At this point, we were still early on in our relationship and living together for a couple of years. He bought an old 1929 house in a suburb near the big city we grew up close to. I would often see the shadows move out of the corner of my eyes and began having a sense that our energy was not the only one there. Nothing too concerning. We had a 120-pound American black lab, so it could have easily been her moving through the house. Or we could explain it away that maybe the neighbors backed in and the lights just hit the windows just right. One day, I tell my husband that I saw a black shadow walk into the laundry room. I was not taken seriously. It has to be some reasonable explanation. I mentioned it because it wasn't an out of the corner of my eye experience this time. The laundry room is in the finished basement. The only windows are glass block windows with a vent, and they are etched and foggy. They are 4x3 blocks, or whatever the standard basement window size is. This part of the basement, the windows face into our backyard. There are no lights coming in from the traffic. The houses were built in an old apple orchard, so the backyards were long. We had an 8-foot wooded fence along the property line. No outside light source. A few weeks later, we are getting ready to go to the store together. I was finishing some laundry, and he is in the basement finishing up something on the computer that was down there, to the left of the laundry room. He asked me to put the dog in her crate while he finishes up. He will be just 1 minute longer. The crate is in the basement, but behind to the right of where my husband is sitting. The laundry room door is open. All the lights are off, now except for the hall light on top of the stairs and the PC. I'm now standing at the end of the stairs, facing my husband, and he's looking at the computer. Black Shadow Dog walks into the laundry room. "My husband, I thought you put dog into her crate." He calls the dog. I'm looking at our dog in her crate. Now he is losing his patience because there are some things in the laundry room that he doesn't want the dog to get to. "Can you please get the dog?" I respond, "What dog?" And he says, "Fine, I'll do it." At this point, I ask him to turn around and look in the crate. He looks at the crate, looks back at the computer. "You saw it, didn't you? You saw the black shadow go into the laundry room too." This is the only time he ever admitted that he saw something in that house. Now, I don't know much about that shadow being. Never really looked into it. This story is a true story based on the author's personal experience. Personally, it is kind of freaky when you think you see something and you look at your friend or whoever is with you and they see it too, and you're just hoping that it was just your imagination. But in this case, it turns out that it probably wasn't just her imagination. This one is brought to you by username Last Brew. Shapeshifted into a deer. I have been Googling this because my best friend and I experienced something strange 20 years ago when we were 10 years old. I am curious if anyone has experienced anything similar. I find myself on occasion thinking about this and still have no clue what it was. I've been out of touch with his friend for probably 10 years, but I can guarantee you, if I were to call him, he'd remember it like it was yesterday. We saw a seemingly human figure walking through my woods in Ohio. It was a dark silhouette. We couldn't make out any actual facial features. It was about 6 feet or taller, slender, and had noticeably long arms and fingers. My friend and I both sat there and watched it walk across my woods for 120 feet from east to west. It periodically looked toward us a few times as it was walking by. I yelled, "Who's that?" I assumed it was a neighbor or something. It then walked behind a very thick tree. There was like a 10-second pause. Then it came out the other side, as a fucking deer. We both were dumbfounded and terrified. We both ran inside to tell my parents, and they seriously laughed at us. I still find myself, now 30 years old, thinking about it. It was the only paranormal experience I've ever encountered. We weren't on drugs or anything, because we were seriously like 10 years old. Sometimes I think it was an alien, demon, or even a skinwalker. I have no idea. This story is the beginning of one of her new series entitled Reddit Stories. The author of this story told us that this was based off of a personal experience in his own life. If you have any theories of what this creature could have been that he saw, please let us know in the comments below. If you like our videos, please think about subscribing to our channel, and until the next story, happy Spooktober.